Hey there, and I hope you're well. I'm Jake the Ashen Hollow, and in this video I thought it'd be cool to check out the comparisons between the wielders of the OG Lord Souls and the beings in Drangleic and Beyond who come into possession of these recycled old Lord Souls. But first, this video is brought to you by the Ridge Wallet. It's a light, sleek, and industrial wallet that doesn't awkwardly bulge in your back pocket. In fact, it's designed to fit easily into your front pocket. If you're like me, then you're probably carrying around a clunky, unorganized mess of a wallet. The Ridge Wallet is the solution to that problem. It holds up to 12 cards and has room for cash and is made with material so durable that it comes with a lifetime warranty. And if you don't like it, you can send it back within 45 days for a full refund. But don't just take my word for it. They have 30,000 5-star reviews. The Ridge Wallet comes in over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. Or if you're like me and like a bit more flair, the camo and tropical styles look great. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to flex on you like that. You can get 10% off and free shipping and returns worldwide by going to ridge.com/ashen and using code ASHEN. You can find the link in the description. Alrighty, let's start with the similarities between Seath the Pale Drake and the Duke's Dear Freya. When defeating Freya in New Game Plus, we received the Old Pale Drake's soul, which is obviously a reference to Seath, but just in case you had any doubts, let's read the description of the Moonlight Greatsword that you can get from the Old Pale Drake's soul. It reads, "The blade of this great sword shines like the brilliant rays of the moon. In the oldest legends rarely spoken of today, it is said that the sword was born of a great white being. The strong attack unleashes its strength, launching a wave of moonlight. The sword of the same name and weapon art is acquired in Dark Souls 1 by cutting it off of Seath himself, so I don't think there can be any confusion there. But there are other parallels within the lore that are interesting as well. Even within fight mechanics, as minor as they seem, Seath can only be damaged after you shatter the primordial crystal, and the Duke's Dear Freya can only be damaged by striking one of her heads. So, similar concepts, but not exactly the same, but enough to bring up if we're drawing parallels. The Lord Soul shard that Gwyn bequeathed upon Seath reads, "Seath allied with Lord Gwyn and turned upon the dragons, and for this he was awarded dukedom, embraced by the royalty and given a fragment of a great soul." Of course, it's interesting that Seath became a duke since we're comparing him to the Duke's Dear Freya. And on top of Seath being a duke, what else do we know about him? That he betrayed his own kind and stood idly by as they were hunted to extinction. And if we read the Brightstone Key dropped by the Duke of Seldora in the private chamber after we defeat Freya, it reads, "The eccentric Lord Seldora, known for his fascination with spiders, built a town and a personal fortune by mining Brightstone. One day the town was overrun by spiders, but Lord Seldora only stood by and watched, eerily contented." Which isn't exactly the same as Seath, but still pretty close. And I think those parallels, albeit nothing super detailed or in-depth, are pretty neato. Speaking of which, let's check out Gravelord Nito and the Rotten, as the Rotten drops the Old Dead One's soul. For starters, they're both made out of lots of people, which is a pretty cool aesthetic, but certainly not their only similarities. Making your way to the Rotten, you have to trudge through poison deep under the earth, and while getting to Nito through the catacombs is under the earth, you don't really have to contend with poison. Which doesn't mean it isn't related to Nito though. He unleashed a miasma of death and disease upon the ancient dragons, and his Gravelord's sword describes the miasma of death as a veritable toxin to any living being. So Nito and poison quite easily go hand in hand. The Dark Fog hex found in the Rotten's domain reads, "A hex that releases a temporary localized mist. Those who breathe in the mist are instantly assailed by poison. This hex is regarded as a poison due to the outward symptoms, but in fact the mist eats away at the target's inner essence. Just the traits that led to the prohibition of hexing. Not quite the same as the miasma Nito releases, but still somewhat similar. Admittedly, there aren't as many parallels to draw between Nito and the Rotten as I'd wished. I was hoping to find some sort of similarity within the Eyes of Death, which is my favorite Nito subject. But anyway, let's jump over to the Lost Sinner, who receives the Witch of Izalith's Old Lord Soul. Now, I've certainly already talked about these similarities at length in my first Sin video, but we can go over them again. The most obvious being the Chaos bug that crawls into the Lost Sinner's eye before the fight begins. And if you agree with the idea that the events of Izalith were the first sin, then it makes the parallels here more obvious and kind of poetic, I suppose. Then there are the pyromancers that come to the aid of the lost sinner, but only during the New Game Plus fight where she actually drops the old witch's soul. From the lost sinner's soul, you can craft her sword, and its description reads, "An ultra great sword forged from the soul of the lost sinner. Its blade saps the life of its wielder. The true nature of the sword is unknown even to the lost sinner herself. Those who choose this sword will share the burden of the lost sinner's misdeeds." It's quite interesting that the Chaos Blade born from the old witch's soul does the exact same thing. It damages the one who swings it, which is quite symbolic of both the sinner's guilt and the guilt I'm sure the witch had for her deeds in Izalith. And finally, let's draw the parallels between Lord Gwyn and the Old Iron King, who of course receives the Old King's soul. Let's quickly go over some of the things we know about Gwyn. He was a super important dude, helped usher in the Age of Fire, went on to do great things, and would do anything to protect his age and people, built a golem out of iron and infused it with a soul to help protect his city, warred with some demons, and when he finally ran out of options, he burned alive to extend the Age of Fire, which some, if not most, would say was misled judgment and was destroyed by the very thing he took part in creating. Okay, now let's read the Smelter Demon's Soul. It says, "The old Iron King's life was taken by a mass of iron that had been given a soul. Was this metal Goliath here from the beginning, or is it a product of the king's conceit?" Alright, he was killed by something he helped create, a mass of iron that had been given a soul. Sounds fairly familiar already. The Aged Smelter Sword mentions that the old Iron King acquired the power to grant life to heaps of iron, and I'm curious if that had anything to do with acquiring Gwyn's old Lord's soul. More curious, I guess, is how did all of these beings get the old Lord souls to begin with, and why? But that's a different topic for a different time. The soul of the old Iron King reads, "Soul of the old Iron King who succumbed to the flames that swallowed his castle. The Iron King's flesh was charred and his soul possessed by the things that lurk below." So the only thing here that doesn't explicitly remind me of Lord Gwyn is the soul being possessed by the things that lurk below. But that could perhaps be similar to what would eventually be known as the Soul of Cinder, which collected and combined essentially all of its predecessors who linked the flame. But it is poetic and iconic that the Iron King's kingdom slipped away and was swallowed by a flame. Because as we know, the very last thing Gwyn did as well was to be bathed in fire.